Happy New Year, everyone. Thank y'all for joining us for our Beef Brunch News Update. This is our first one of 2022, so it's going out on January 11th of 2022. We are going to kick this off. I'm going to turn it over to Lee first to go ahead and do our news update for the Northwest region.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be with y'all today. Happy to see a new year. Very fortunate to be blessed with another year on this earth, and excited to get going. There's a lot to talk about in this part of the country. Gonna try not to be too pessimistic. I talked to somebody that listened to these videos from time to time, and he said, "Boy, you tend to be down in the dumps on a lot of your stuff you talk about." Well, sometimes you can't help it. So I'm going to try to temper the bad with the good, I guess. First off is the weather. I guess that's what we need to talk about, and that's straight out the door with something that's not too pleasant. Um, Back about a week ago now, I guess. We were running with daytime highs in the mid 70s all the way up to 80s, setting record high temperatures and record high lows, if that makes any sense, only dipping down into the 50s and 60s at night. And the ryegrass and clover exploded in this part of the state. And I haven't talked to Vince before we recorded this, so it's going to be interesting to see what his take on it all. But I'll tell you what's going on in this corner of the state. The winter forages just exploded, and we were even seeing some summer grasses starting to kind of peek their heads out, and some grazing taking place on that during this time. And then we got walloped. We got walloped with some nighttime lows down into the 20s. Uh, I've heard anywhere from 21 at the lowest to in the mid 20s, high 20s there for two nights straight, days not getting above 35 or so. There was some light freezing rain up this way in portions. It wasn't even enough really to register, not enough to make travel an issue, not enough to ice anything over really. I mean, there was a little bit of ice here and there on gates and a little bit on grass. But what it did, this cold weather, what it did is it just knocked these winter forages, particularly ryegrass and clover, just knocked it in the head. No other way to put it. Um, Vast amounts of dieback in this. We saw some of these pastures that were just lush and green and growing. Cattle were grazing on them. Really good growth. Overnight change into something that's less than desirable, to say the least. Uh, Phone hasn't quit ringing about it. I've had some folks call that were kind of upset about their certain variety of ryegrass or how their oats were performing versus wheat versus cereal rye, et cetera, so forth. This phenomenon hadn't been related to one variety of ryegrass or one specific species, I guess you would say. It's been across the board. We've seen it. I've had a lot of people ask, what can we do about it? Well, time will tell. It is what we're seeing. I went out into a pasture yesterday and was looking and was starting to see some signs of regrowth. I saw some white clover that it kind of started to peek his head back up and started to look like it was putting on a little growth. But the thing to keep in mind too is this is a period of high demand. I mean, these cattle, if you got yearlings turned out on it or grown cows turned on it, they're going to be searching for anything green. So you're really going to have to pay attention to how you're stocking these pastures that are set back because of this extreme cold period. Um, I've had a lot of people ask, why did this happen? And it's cold shock, plain and simple, is what I view it as. That may not be the most appropriate term, but the analogy I've been using with folks is how whenever you set tomato plants out in the early spring, you know, uh, kind of when you're pushing it to get your tomatoes in, and you don't harden them off. You don't set them out a little bit at a time to develop some hardiness to them. Then if you just plant a tomato directly into the soil on a cold day coming straight from a greenhouse, it's going to shock it, and that's what we saw with these winter forages. I think time will tell. I think that there will be some stand loss on some varieties, but at the same time, I think it's going to be minimal. I think as long as we watch how these pastures are grazed and don't get too carried away with it and kind of give it a chance to come back, I think it will. But if we really hammer it hard at a high stocking rate, it's going to be tough for some of it to make a comeback very quickly. We could talk quite a long time about that, but I know we've got other stuff to discuss. On the weather front, I do want to mention um, we had some severe storms roll through the area this past weekend. We had some cattle producers down in Sabine Parish that, boy, they just really got walloped. There was a tornado that spun up kind of out of the blue down that way and affected several cattle producers down on the southern end of Sabine Parish. A couple of barns fall on some cattle, cattle get scattered, and so on and so forth. So our thoughts and prayers are with those producers that have gone through that. And if you're listening to this and you're down in that part of the country and you need anything, just don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll do what we can. As far as cattle markets go, Jason's not with us today, so we don't have him to lean on for a full report. But I'll tell you what I know and kind of give you a brief overview of what I've seen. Most of these sale barns have just now gotten kicked back off this past week, running some sales and everything. There's a lot of optimism, and it doesn't necessarily reflect well in the futures markets, and it doesn't necessarily reflect well in fat cattle sales. But as far as replacement or feeder cattle markets, calf markets, there's a lot of optimism out there, and prices are pretty decent, I would say, holding steady for sure. People are anticipating these higher calf prices, which we've been anticipating them for a couple of years, and so a lot of people will believe it when they see it, but really seeing some pretty good optimism on that. Um, as of just a few minutes ago, of course, like I said, we're recording this, so this will be delayed information. But February live cattle futures are trading at 136.25. February feeders was at 160.92. The one kind of hamper on all this, the downside of that's weighing heavily on these cattle markets right now is the price of corn. We've been at $6 corn off and on for the last couple of days. Just checked, and the March quote on March corn is at $5.99. You go out into some of those forward months on those forward contracts on this corn, and you're still above $6. The price of corn is really holding us back as far as a true run on these cattle prices. So if you see these corn prices moderate a little bit, I think that we're really setting ourselves up to see a real good showing on these cattle prices. With that being said, I think that's all I've got, and I'll turn it back over to you, Ashley.
Okay, thank you, sir. Vince, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for Central and South Louisiana.
Okay, thank you, Ashley, and Happy New Year to everyone watching and listening to us on this news update. My sentiments are with Lee. We had those same, somewhat of the same temperatures. Fortunately, in a way, since Thanksgiving, we've had a couple of really decent rains. Some 2.5, 3 inch rains, two of those. So it didn't make folks feel so bad about spending that $1,000 ton nitrate or nitrogen price for top dress, and we got some real accelerated growth on the forages, just as Lee mentioned in his part of the world. But there again, we got those 2 nights of down to 24 one night and to 27 the following night. Those ryegrass fields just were dinged up, beyond what one could imagine. Had it been a more constant chill factor involved, I think we'd have seen less injury. In walking through some earlier this morning, the clover is trying to, come on back out. But there are some large areas of dead, matted grass that probably will not come back, as far as the ryegrass is concerned. So, that's the downfall of these high input costs. From Thanksgiving time, from $700 and $800 nitrogen prices. One guy showed me his receipt this morning. It was $1,019 for a ton of urea. So that he put out 2 days ago. It's unthinkable that we need some moderating input costs, and we need some higher calf prices for people to survive. With the opening of the sale barns last week, as Lee mentioned, they had some tremendously big runs last week in this area. Folks that didn't plant ryegrass, cattle are thin, really thin, and they're taking what they can get for them and walking away from it. Whether they, walking away from it with a profit, most likely not. But we probably won't see a whole bunch of these folks get back into it. The crazy thing about all this market and this cattle business, if this market goes to the direction that they're indicating with these higher calf prices and higher cow calf or replacement stocker cow prices, the crazy thing is we get people jump into this thing, and that's just the vicious part of the cycle. So it's kind of a catch-22. Myself, as being a producer and a cow calf operator for 30 years, it's really hard to wrap your mind around which direction this thing is going and how we're going to sustain being profitable and continue to pay the bills and to move forward with this high fuel price, high fertilizer price. That one producer that showed me that receipt of $1,000 for a ton of urea this morning. He said he has his own hay equipment. He said if I had to go out and buy $10,000 or $15,000 worth of hay a year, he said I'm out of business. So it's really a hard judgment call on how this thing is going to all spell out if we don't see an increase in marketable calf prices. With that being said, I took a little time and sit in one of the local auction barns last Tuesday, and there's a lot of thin cattle coming through the barn, but the better cattle that had been preconditioned, so to speak, and had some substance to them brought good money. Kill cow prices, good cows, good cow calf pairs would still near $1,000 for a good cow calf pair. Bring us some Brayford type cows. So I guess there's some producers that see a viability left to this cattle industry and here locally. I hope that continues. But we're getting back into the weather scene. We're in a really dry situation for central Louisiana and South Louisiana. We haven't had any speakable rain since right around Thanksgiving. We've had a lot of passing fronts that come through with a drizzle at best. The weather that came through last night, it was followed by a 30-mile-an-hour north wind. We had just only a trace of rain yesterday afternoon, which it helps, but we're unseasonably dry at this time for South Louisiana. A lot of tractors working in the field. The cane harvest is just wrapped up. Those guys have just a little bit of mud to wash over their cane equipment, where normally that they're fixing ruts and that as deep as the tractor can go right now. But they're just as it was just as pleasant of a harvest as far as the cane is concerned in central and South Louisiana, with some of the mills still running at this point. But that says a lot whenever it's dry as it is, and they can have a good harvest. But other things are not going to happen so good. I mean, homeowners and people that are planting into their landscape, you're going to have a hell of a time digging a hole to plant a tree in. It's so dang dry. It's like concrete. It's just like it would be in late spring going into summer. So as far as the cattle scene, getting back on that, a lot of supplementation. People have got pretty good ryegrass following that freeze. It's starting to rebound. So hopefully we got some moderating conditions that kind of hold us out. But you guys know what January and February can hold, and it seems as our winter season, the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, it's like our winter's like 45 to 60 days later than it had been. God forbid we have anything like we had last year in mid-February, but that's always a possibility. So with that being said, bulls are going to soon be going out. A lot of people are feeding bulls right now in preconditioning, to go out for the breeding season. The fall calf crop is pretty much here. The spring calf crop is full blown coming out. So hopefully that, we get an early spring and a lot of green grass growing soon, and the ryegrass that has been so expensive that we can get it to rebound and make it into spring with what we got. Because a lot of people are talking about not putting that second application of nitrogen to get through it. It's just overbearing as far as the cost is concerned. So that's about all I have from the central part of the state.
All right, thank you, sir. So I visited with Jason, as Lee said, and as y'all can see, I'm sure Jason is not with us today. He's getting ready for Ag Expo. Come, exactly what would you like me to say for the Northeast region? And I think Lee put it nicely, because when I asked Jason what to say, the first thing he said was ryegrass looks like crap. So the ryegrass is looking kind of rough, as Lee mentioned, and Vince mentioned a little bit as well. Those cold temps last week kind of hurt it and burned the tops of it. But in terms of rain for the Northeast region, on the far east side of the Northeast region, they got quite a bit of rain. Jason was sitting in Delhi this morning and said that around our livestock show barn there in Delhi, you could tell it had flooded. There's quite a bit of water there. So pretty heavy rains over on the eastern part of the state. And then towards, I guess, be more of the central part of the state, the western portion of the Northeast region, kind of just some moderate rains, a little bit like Lee was talking about earlier. And so, just kind of reiterating there what both Lee and Vince have said. And you can hear it in my voice. Vince was saying it before we got started. You can hear that I'm still stuffy, my sinuses, all this weather's getting to me, and we're moving into the stock show season. So I know that's going to get even better here coming into the cold weather and in and out of all the barns. But as I mentioned a while ago, we have Ag Expo going on this coming weekend at the Ike Hamilton in West Monroe. So that's January 14th and 15th. We have the expo itself with all kinds of vendors, and we're doing Ag Alley and some speakers and things like that going on there. And then the livestock show as well, Friday and Saturday, excuse me. And then in terms of all the shows, we've got different parish shows going throughout the state. The district shows are kicking off. I hope Vince didn't jinx us in terms of the state show this year, and that hopefully the state show goes very well. Unlike last year, hopefully we don't have any interruptions with that. But we're getting started. I just normally call this stock show season, and to add to, I guess, our events and things going on for the Ag Center, we're going to kick off our next round of the Advanced Master Cattlemen's coming up. We kicked that off, I believe, on the 21st. So Dr. Scaglia, again, coordinates that. If you didn't sign up for it and you're interested, I'm not sure if we still have spots available or not. I didn't check with him before recording this. But you can email me and I can ask him if you are still interested in the Advanced Master Cattleman program. For our webinar series, for our Beef Brunch webinar series, today, when this goes out, January 11th, I'm also releasing a webinar for the month. Typically, we do these as live webinars, as many of you know, but with scheduling conflicts today, and so what I've done is I've pre-recorded a webinar that covers all of our different extension programs that we have for cattle producers here in Louisiana. And so I'll release that. It'll go on our Beef Brunch website, which is lsuagcenter.com/beef brunch. It is also on our LSU Ag Center livestock channel on YouTube. Next month, I'm excited. We have Dr. David Lawman from Oklahoma State University. He's an extension cattle specialist for OSU, and he's going to discuss hay feeding efficiency. So that'll be on Tuesday, February 8th. That will be live at 10:30. So we hope that you can join us live for that. We'll mention it in our next news update. We still have one more news update before that. But go ahead and mark your calendars for Tuesday, February 8th. Again, Dr. Lawman with Oklahoma State University Extension is going to be talking about hay feeding efficiency. So we're excited to have him for a guest speaker. And then we've got a few more lined up that I'll be updating our website soon. In March, Jason and Lee are going to come in and talk about marketing opportunities for calves. And then in April, we'll have Dr. Navarre come in and do a herd health talk as well. And so we'll keep getting those updated. We'll, of course, keep reminding you of everything here. And so I think that that's all we have to wrap up for today. I want to wish all of our exhibitors good luck in your parish and your district shows. Hope everybody hangs in there with all these weather swings that we've been having. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free, reach out to your local extension office, reach out to one of us, and we'll be happy to answer those questions for you.